Let's freaking go. We are recapping everything in the SEC from this past weekend, and we're going to start off with one scorching hot take, and I know this might not age perfectly, so come in a little bit closer. Ole Miss, yes, the Rebels that have 2 losses, they are the best team in the SEC. They have only trailed this season for a grand total of 2 minutes. 2 minutes. Are you freaking kidding me? And look, let's be honest. How many teams have you watched this season that are better than the Ole Miss Rebels? I've not seen one just based on the eye test. They go into Fayetteville and they don't have their best offensive player, and they torch a really solid Arkansas Razorback team. 63 points. Are you kidding me? But what puts them ahead of everyone else right now is their defensive line. This is one of the best SEC defensive lines I have ever seen. And you guys know this is my favorite position. I do film studies every week. They are often very quarterback focused, but if I could get paid just to do defensive line breakdowns for the rest of eternity, I would do it if it generated the most clicks. And the SEC Player of the Year is Walter Nolan. He is the best SEC football player I have seen this year. Now, if I wanted to give it to an offensive player, I think I'd have to give it to Dylan Sampson at this point. But of course, he's had some fumble issues. But the truth is, the best SEC player I have seen is number 2 for Ole Miss. Now, I don't think he's going to get it because he doesn't have this big personality like some of the other superstar defensive tackles that we've seen. He doesn't have the same aura of a Glenn Dorsey or a Ndamukong Suh, but he has been great. And the stats don't back it up. But I'm telling you right now, if you were to go under my Twitter page and say, hey, I don't like Walter Nolan's stats. The most tackles he's had in a game is 7 yards or 7 tackles. If you come to me and say that, you can get the hell out of here. Because that means you don't watch ball. That means you don't actually watch the games. Watch the damn games. I saw Cole Kubelik, a friend of mine, and Cole is, to me, the best analyst out there covering the SEC week to week. He can do it all. He brought this up earlier in the year. He said, Walter Nolan's having a great season, and everybody commented underneath him, hey, what are the stats? What are the stats? So, I don't do a whole lot of Ole Miss stuff, but the guy's been, to me, the best player I've seen. Him and Dylan Sampson, and we can discuss a few others, right? But it is what it is at this point. Now, quite a few of you are Tennessee supporters of mine. I do a Tennessee film study every week. We have a lot of Oklahoma viewers, and by far, the biggest viewership that we have are the Arkansas Razorbacks. I won't talk a whole lot about them, even though Sam Pittman is the thumbnail image of this video. What I will say, though, is Sam Pittman, I don't know what's going to happen with him. I had John Neighbors on. John, to me, is one of the best Arkansas personalities there is. I've known John for a long time. I think we're about the same age. And, John's like me. He's built his own little empire at Inside Arkansas. And John Neighbors brought up an interesting opinion from last Monday on what he thinks is going to happen to Sam Pittman. He thinks Sam Pittman's going to retire at the end of the season. Now, I don't know if that's going to happen. I don't know how that would even work. If he were to retire, would he forego the $12 million Arkansas would owe him at the end of this year? I don't know. I really don't know. But I mean, I gotta be real honest. I am not sure what's going to happen next. Obviously, in the perfect world for Arkansas fans, he retires and the buyout gets reduced from the $12 million. You can go to him and say, look, Sam, I am a believer in you. I love you. We did you, though, a favor to bring you back for another season. So just to let it be known that it's not just my beautiful face on here, let's add in a little extra graphics. I want you just to look at this long and hard, all right? I don't know how many more times I have to tell fans that are Arkansas fans that are defending Sam Pittman that the sign of a good coach is your team getting better as the season moves forward? Now, we can point to the Mississippi State game, but Mississippi State had their issues yesterday with UMass. Mississippi State got beat by Toledo. And yeah, they showed some fight versus Texas, and they showed some fight versus Georgia. If you actually watch those games, it was pretty clear that those teams went into cruise control. All right, Mississippi State's probably the worst team in the SEC right now. So Arkansas goes ham on Mississippi State. But every single season, Sam Pittman is going to give you an absolute stinker in November. And at the same time, he's going to give you a result that you never really expect. So at this juncture, before the season began, I said Arkansas was going to either beat Texas or LSU because they have a bye week before both of those teams, and both of those teams get up before they play each other. And Texas is going to be in the ultimate look-ahead spot here in a few weeks because they do have A&M around the corner. But truth be told, if Arkansas beats Texas, and they don't have A&M around the corner the next week, it's the next week, but you get the picture. Look-ahead spot for Texas. Arkansas is in a really, really rough spot here. So, obviously, you beat Louisiana Tech. You're 6-6. You're over the Vegas win total. You're going to a bowl game. And Arkansas in the SEC is a 6-6, 7-5 program, which is fine. I am fine with that from an Arkansas perspective. But what should concern you is getting your ass blown out. Now, we know this. Arkansas has played a lot of really good teams close, right? Arkansas has a lot of close losses, but they also have a lot of blowout losses. Last year versus Auburn was simply inexcusable, especially with what we know about Peyton Thorne. Last year versus Missouri was the sign of a team that gave up on their coach. And then you had this. I understand your quarterback got hurt. I get that. I understand you don't have Jaquinda Jackson and you don't have Braylon Russell, and Rashad Dominion is not an SEC level back. But let's be real here. You shouldn't have got blown out as bad as you did by Jackson Dart. Now, a lot of this falls on Travis Williams. And look, I'm also pissed off at Arkansas because I bet the under on this game. And not only did the under not hit, Ole Miss got over the total by 9 points on their own. And here's the funny thing about the over-under at 54.5. I listen to this podcast called Bet the Board every week. Really good Vegas podcast. I'm big into betting, as many of you know. And I have been terrible this year. There's no excuse. Now, once again, every year I'm good at picking win total over-unders, and I'm having another really good season with that. But I have been terrible at picking games. Terrible. And I'll be the first to admit it. But Bet the Board. 3 experts, Brad Powers, Payne Insider, and Todd Furman, their best play of the week. I mean, these are sharp people. They know way more ball than I'll ever know. Their sharp play of the week was under this win total. And they didn't give that play out till Saturday morning. I gave this play out on Friday. So even the sharpest minds are like, I like the under in this game. And to have Ole Miss with one player, it was basically just one receiver. A guy that everyone thought would be Ole Miss's number 3 option. Jordan Watkins. 8 catches, 254 yards, 5 touchdowns. I don't think people understand how ridiculous that is. Y'all, Justin Jefferson never had this kind of game in college. Jamar Chase never had this kind of game in college. I mean, how many statistical games have been better than that by one receiver? Honestly, there's only one, and that was Jalen Hyatt versus Alabama. He had a 5-touchdown game in that 2022 win, but that is inexcusable. And a few weeks ago, everyone was like, well, Travis Williams, he's going to be the next great coach. That was one of the more pathetic defensive efforts I can remember. And you guys know I'm a very big T-Will guy. So maybe Arkansas has just gotten lucky that they have not played any elite passing offenses up to this point. You take a look, Oklahoma State can't throw, Auburn can't throw, A&M can't throw, Tennessee can't throw. They could throw some, but they can't throw, and that game was on the road. And then you play the only two teams that have quarterbacks that can really throw the football, and they both torch you. LSU and Ole Miss, okay? It's inexcusable. It's absolutely positively inexcusable. So should Sam Pittman get fired? No. At least not now. Now we get to your questions. Maxwell says we're done with Sam. Mike says Pittman will retire and Petrino will take over. And Mike says Arkansas should have never fired Petrino from the get-go. Huh? I love it. Absolutely love it. But they had to. Okay, I don't want to go down that road again. I think they had to, based on what I know. But you guys probably know more than me. Oklahoma, ho-hum. Okay, whatever. We'll skip the main breakdown. And then we get to Hugh Freeze. Now, you see the poll question right here. Which SEC coach should get fired first? Sam Pittman winning this, 50%. Hugh Freeze at 43%. Mark Stoops at 7%. And nobody is saying Brent Venables. That's interesting. You get to this Hugh Freeze game. Now, funny thing about it, Auburn outgained Vanderbilt by 100 yards in this game. But, once again, Hugh Freeze's guys come up short. Peyton Thorne, of course, left some yards out on the field. But, honestly, I put a lot of this game on the Auburn skill guys. There were opportunities for their skill guys to go out there and make plays. They went down too easy. They didn't break enough tackles. And Auburn, arguably their best skill guy, Fairweather, had about as worst of a second half as you could have imagined. Drop passes. Vanderbilt's defense outstrengthed him on, a few catches, a few fumbles. And that was that. This Auburn offensive design is terrible. And when they actually do scheme things open, Peyton Thorne misses it. The left side of the offensive line for Auburn is just absolutely abysmal. And it's inexcusable that this got to this point with an offensive mastermind. Now, I understand Hugh Freeze has a record that is worse than Brian Harson's after 2 games. The difference is Hugh Freeze has a pretty big-time recruiting class coming in, and Brian Harsin didn't have that. And on top of that, I would like to see a Hugh Freeze offense with a different quarterback than Peyton Thorne. Now, is everything Peyton Thorne's fault? No. But I think without reasonable doubt, Hugh Freeze deserves another season. But, man, the turnovers have got to be fixed. I know it wasn't a bad turnover game in this game per se, but, man, the story should be Vanderbilt and them being bowl eligible. I had them over their win total. I felt pretty comfortable about that. And they have doubled it, tripled it, if you would have got it at 2 or 2.5 or whatever. Vanderbilt's a real deal team. As an LSU fan, I am worried as hell about them here in a few weeks. Vanderbilt will get a bye week before they play LSU. And look, Clark Lee, SEC Coach of the Year, right? You can give it to Lane Kiffin. You can give it to a lot of different people, but actually, I don't think you can give it to Lane. I think you do have to give it to Clark Lee with what he's done at Vanderbilt. The second time in 3 years, Vanderbilt has outkicked their coverage, and they are going bowling. Now, we get to the Florida-Georgia game. I tried to make a cruise joke. When I started doing country radio, literally, I think the first year I did country radio, Cruise had just come out. And I thought that's just what all country sounded like. And boy, was I wrong. Huh? 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 But the bottom line is this was the biggest bummer result of the SEC. Georgia getting away from Florida. And obviously, this is kind of a depressing game to talk about with DJ Lagway getting hurt, changed the game. I thought Warner came in and actually did some good things. Aiden Warner, the third stringer. For a third-string quarterback, he really wasn't bad going up against arguably the best defense in the SEC. What I've seen from Georgia, I actually do like Ole Miss to beat Georgia next weekend. I do. I know Georgia more than likely will be slight favorites, but Ole Miss has been the best team to me in the SEC. And if they truly are as good as I think they are, I think they'll win this game next weekend. You go position by position. I think Ole Miss has a better defensive line. I think Ole Miss, I think the linebacker disparity isn't that great here. Georgia's secondary is better than Ole Miss's, but I don't think that's big of a disparity either. You look at the other side of the football. Quarterback, it's about even. Jackson Dart's playing better right now. Offensive line, Georgia's got a better O-line. Running back, Georgia's got better running backs. But we'll see what Etienne's health looks like. If he's not healthy, it really isn't that big of a deal. And, even without Trey Harris, Ole Miss has better receivers than Georgia. And tight end's pretty even. Obviously, with what Ole Miss has a tight end with Prieskorn, this is, to me, a pretty even matchup. And I give the edge to Ole Miss. And I probably will bet Ole Miss, when this game opens. Let me see if there is a point spread released on this game just yet. Let's see. Let's go. We should have a line. And Georgia by 6.5. Crazy. I would have never thought it'd be 6.5. The Bulldogs favored. I will be betting Ole Miss. I will. Now, some other look-ahead lines. Alabama, 2.5-point favorites over LSU. Missouri, 3.5-point favorites at home versus a lifeless Oklahoma team. Interesting. Obviously, the quarterback situation is what we need to monitor. We'll skip talking Mississippi State, and then we'll get to South Carolina, Texas A&M. Were the Aggies fraudulent? No. Texas A&M still a really good team. South Carolina does this every year. They do it every year. Shane Beamer is that good of a coach. And let's just say South Carolina would have beaten LSU or would have beaten Alabama on the road. I would probably give Coach of the Year to South Carolina. This team has played one of the harder schedules in the SEC. That is basically the case every single season. And they outplayed LSU. Got very unlucky. They outplayed Alabama in the second half of that game, and they came up short. And they outplayed Texas A&M, and they get the result. Sellers, fantastic. Raheem Sanders, fantastic. The one thing that's very interesting about South Carolina is they never have a good offensive line, and they were able to hold up good enough against this Texas A&M defensive line that's really good. Now, here's what's interesting. There is nothing, and I mean absolutely nothing, I have ever been flamed for more than I have been flamed for my opinions on Shamar Turner. And it's amazing how many people admit that they are bad teammates. Like, everyone excuses Shamar Turner's actions versus Ole Miss last year. They excuse what he did versus LSU because he is such an elite player, and he is. You could make a case behind Walter Nolan. He's been the second best defensive tackle in the SEC this year. But the truth is, the dude is a walking 15-yard penalty. And he is a overall dirty player, right? For some reason, if you're a 5-star and your last name is Turner and you play defensive line, you're going to be a dirty player. But that aside, Texas A&M, I don't think that they're fraudulent. Obviously, they have no room for comfort. They have to win out to go to the college football playoff, and it is going to be a rocky road. New Mexico State at home, they should take care of business. They are at Auburn. That game could be tricky. And Texas. So if they win out, they could still be in the SEC championship game. And this is a benefit that 3 teams in the SEC have had this year: Missouri, LSU, and Texas A&M. Preseason, I do my own schedule rankings on which schedules I think are the easiest, and I tier them. And in a separate tier from every other team in the SEC, Texas A&M, LSU, and Missouri had by far the easiest schedules in the SEC. And it wasn't close. Texas A&M, South Carolina, and Missouri. By far the easiest schedules. And it is played out well for all 3 of those schools. Now, I'm not saying it's been easy. Nothing in the SEC is just easy outside of the schedules that Kentucky used to play. But the truth still remains the same. Those breaks in their schedule have set up really nicely for those schools, right? A&M caught a massive break this year. They're one of the few teams that doesn't have to play Alabama or Georgia, who most would consider the 2 most talented teams in the SEC going into this year. Most would say they are the 2 best recruiters. They avoid both of those schools, and the toughest SEC team they played this year is Texas, who they get in a rivalry week game at home in College Station. So, whatever the case may be, A&M gets a huge schedule break. And then we'll get to Tennessee. All right. So before we started this stream today, I finished my Tennessee film study this morning. So I didn't want to stay up late and cut it. I wanted to get a fresh night of sleep to really think about this game. Because you finally saw Nico throw for 300 yards. It was 292, basically 300. Miles Kitselman was their best receiver, 6 catches, 97 yards, and a touchdown. But Dylan Sampson's the best running back in the SEC. I can understand not wanting to give him SEC Offensive Player of the Year because he has had some critical fumbles in some of these games. But the dude is the best running back in the SEC. I am not sure there's a close second. You could say Etienne when he's healthy. Jarquez Hunter's had bad blocking. Jaquindon Jackson's gotten hurt. But Dylan Sampson's the best running back in the SEC. Now, this game really tilted in Tennessee's favor when Brock Vandegrift was basically out and Devin Wimsatt, the transfer from Rutgers, went in and basically threw the game away. But I give Tennessee a lot of credit. Dane Key, who torched him last season, only 2 catches for 42 yards. This was a really good Tennessee victory. And it's one of those things there with the eye test. When you look at Tennessee, you can clearly see that this is not an elite team, right? You can clearly see that this isn't an elite team. But they have an elite coach. Tim Banks continues a really good season. One stat that has been really impressive, and some of this is luck. There's going to be some regression to the mean when it comes to this. But, you know, one thing Tennessee's done a really good job at is making the touchdown-saving tackle and forcing the opposing team to convert in the red zone. All right? So, take a look at this. By far, it's not close. The best team when it comes to red zone defense are the Tennessee Vols. 32% touchdown percentage. So basically what that means is every 3 times an opponent gets into the Tennessee red zone, they only score a touchdown 1 out of every 3 times. That is ridiculous. And they got the first half interception versus Alabama on the jump ball from Jalen Milroe. A really good play by number 3. And they get the really crucial 4th down stop early in the game versus Kentucky. Man, it's impressive. It's really, really, really impressive. So, look, I think Tennessee will make the playoffs. Obviously, all they have to do, they can lose to Georgia. And if they lose to Georgia, the rest of their schedule sets up really nicely. Mississippi State's the worst team in the SEC. And they also play UTEP, which hasn't been good all season. And they have to go to Vanderbilt. Okay? Crazy final month. It looked like it was the easiest month, but it's not with that final game versus Vanderbilt. Okay? Now, type Y for yes, type in for no. And I want you to be honest because a lot of you peeked and looked at some of the other games throughout college football. Type Y for yes, type in for no. The best team in college football is in the SEC. Answer that truthfully. Type Y for yes, type in for no. The best team in college football is in the SEC. Okay? Let me know. Let's go to Bruce. Bruce, welcome. We will go live every Saturday morning at 9:30 a.m. from this point forward, or Sunday morning at 9:30 a.m. Okay? I have had it with Freeze. Here's my thing. And this is, okay, this will come off really wrong. All right, this will come off really, really, really wrong, but that's okay. One thing about Hugh Freeze that is working against him is if you are a good guy, a fraction of the fan base will be more patient with you. All right? If you are a good guy. And I've noticed this with how some Arkansas fans talk about Sam Pittman because Sam Pittman is likable. Sam Pittman is likable. He is a good guy in the minds of a lot of Arkansas fans. But you have to separate that from the job he is getting paid $6+ million a year to do. All right. Hugh Freeze, in his prior life, before becoming the Auburn head coach, is not viewed as a good guy. I think 3 out of every 4 people that know about college football would say Hugh Freeze is not the guy that I would want to hang out with. And 9 out of every 10 Arkansas fans or just people in general would die to have a beer with Sam Pittman, right? But you have to separate the two. But the truth is, when Hugh Freeze was hired, a lot of Auburn fans were able to push aside everything else and just say, hey, it's football. The other stuff is bad, but that's what Auburn decided to do. But if you are a bad, or if people view you as a bad dude, they turn on you quicker, right? And the truth is, if you're to take a look at Arkansas's future and you're to take a look at Auburn's future, it is without reasonable doubt that Auburn's future is far brighter because of the recruiting class that they have coming in. And they flipped the young man from Notre Dame to Auburn, Deuce Knight. And, a lot of people are excited about the future. There's not a whole lot of Arkansas fans that are like on fire about the future. And they've already turned the page to basketball and baseball season, right? So it's interesting how that works. But, I feel as if Hugh Freeze fans, there's just not many of them. I think most Auburn fans want him gone. All right? Even with the elite recruiting class coming in. I also think most Arkansas fans want Sam Pittman gone too. But there is I really do feel it. There is a fraction of the fan base that loves him just because of who he is. Because this is his dream job. And when he's done here at Arkansas, I doubt he ever coaches again. Okay? Now, I could be wrong about all of that, but, there was a viral clip, and I know both of these guys. I don't know them well, but Bo Mattingly and Chuck Barrett. Bo Mattingly works for the Arkansas team and does a lot of their media stuff. Very talented guy. And Chuck Barrett said, look, we love Sam Pittman. You got to love Arkansas to really make this job work. And that segment aged terribly because obviously Arkansas got blown out yet again at home. But the truth is Sam is maxed out. Sam is maxed out. I think he's done. I as the day goes by, this has not left me. This has honestly shook me to my core. Because, a few years ago, I went to an event where Sam Pittman was there. And this was before, not this past season, but the year before. And I felt he was burned out. When he was there, I felt like, God, it was like a charity event. I was like, God, the guy looks like he's just burned out. It looks like he's just toast. And when John Neighbor said what he said on my show on Monday, it has shook me to my core. Honestly, I think Sam Pittman's retiring at the end of the season. And what I think is going to happen is I think his buyout at the end of the year is like $12 million. And I think it'll be a mutual parting of ways. And the buyout will go down to about like $5 or $6 million. And he'll retire to his lake house in Lake Hamilton. Okay. Let's go to a Georgia fan. Donnie, I need a Georgia vantage point here. I really do. All right. Now, Donnie, I don't know if you saw this early in the summer. I did a breakdown of the Georgia spring game. And the thing that blew me away about the Georgia spring game was how bad the skill guys looked in that game, or how mid they've looked. And without Etienne out there, Georgia's skill guys look average. They look very average. And what I think it is, I don't think Georgia has bad skill guys. They just have a bunch of number twos. They don't have a number one. And obviously when Brock Bowers and Ladd McConkey left, those guys are number ones in the NFL right now as rookies, and both have had good rookie seasons. It's just, there's just nobody there, right? I know Dominic Lovett's had his moments. Cash Jones, whatever his name is, 32, had a ridiculous touchdown on the angle route yesterday. But let me know, Donnie, your thoughts on that. Let's go to Terry. Arkansas better start Malachi Singleton the rest of the year. Yeah, so this is how I would handle that. Okay. You have a bye week to get Taylon Green fully healthy and play Texas. I don't think Malachi Singleton could beat Texas. What I will say, though, Terry, is, and I don't think enough coaches do this, all right? So this is one thing that I have always stood true on, is I think you should start your backup quarterback against the worst team on your schedule. You should start your backup quarterback unless you have Cam Ward. All right? Unless you have your guy and you know the backup isn't nearly as good as that guy. Unless you have Shedeur Sanders. All right? Your quarterback has to be a mother effing dude. Now, I have defended Taylon Green quite a bit. I've also criticized him quite a bit. Taylon Green played well yesterday, all things considered. And I also think Taylon Green isn't so unfreaking believably good that you shouldn't at least see what you have in your backup. But do I think Malachi Singleton's good? I've always liked him. I really have. I've always liked him. But I do think in the range of outcomes, Taylon Green becoming a ridiculous player and having some type of leap in his final year of eligibility is in that range of outcomes. Now, I think the only way that happens is if Bobby Petrino somehow remains the offensive coordinator next year. But still. All right, so let's talk about this. Taylor Green, he played well. He only scored 3 points. All right. Let's break down what happened to Taylor Green yesterday. All right, you get a red zone stop, and the play calling deep on your own 1 yard line was terrible. I thought that was Bobby's worst called series of the season. And I think he was set up to fail. I don't know what else he could have done. On the second down play, he could have fit the ball on a slant on a tight window to Broden. And then on the third down play, he didn't set the protection right. But at the same time, I didn't like the play call. I hated the first down play call as well. I cannot state this enough. And I don't know if you saw this at the beginning, but Ole Miss's defensive line is one of the best SEC defensive lines I have ever seen, period. Like, this is, especially if you take out the big three in the SEC. If you take out Georgia, Alabama, and LSU, where they have an unfair advantage when it comes to recruiting defensive linemen based on their state fertility and based on their recruiting advantages, right? And those three schools in particular have won so many championships because, their defensive lines are so deep. They're able to pay up and get the 5 stars and able to just recruit the 5 stars, right? Especially if you take out those 3 schools, because those 3 schools have the best defensive lines, in particular Alabama and Georgia. And this comes from an LSU guy. Ole Miss is the best SEC defensive line I've ever seen outside of the big 3. Okay. They are that damn good. I mean, they are so unfreaking believably good. They are by far the leader in all of college football with sacks, 42 sacks. No one else has over 35. All right. And let's just take the LSU game. The LSU game where Ole Miss was playing their 7th game in 7 weeks. Let me repeat. They were playing their 7th game in 7 weeks. And they were missing their best pass rusher. And they destroyed the LSU offensive line in the trenches. Destroyed them. They could not run. Granted, LSU's not been able to run on anyone. But, I mean, sit down and go watch that game. This is, on paper, LSU had the best offensive line going into the season. And you expected Arkansas's offensive line to in a must-win game for Ole Miss to hold up against them? No. So I do not fault any quarterback that plays a bad game versus Ole Miss. I also don't fault any offensive line that has a bad game versus Ole Miss's front because they are that damn good. I mean, they are really good. The best defensive line since then, and Donnie would attest to this, was Georgia in 2021. Right, that was the best defensive line. That might be the best defensive line ever in the SEC, and that was what Jalen Carter, Wyatt, Nolan Smith. Who else am I mentioning? I'm drawing a blank, but they were the best, and there's not really, to me, a close second. They had all of them got drafted in the next few drafts. I mean, they were stupid good. And then, of course, Alabama's defensive line, that Deron Payne, Quentin Williams era was insane. That Deron Payne defensive line was excellent. Once again, I could be wrong. And someone like Cole Kubelik could call me an idiot. But Ole Miss's defensive line is that damn good. All right? So you're fighting an uphill battle. You needed your defense to step up because you got the biggest wild card. Ole Miss has got the best receiver in the SEC. And he was hurt. He didn't play. They load managed him. And you gave up 63 points, and you allowed their number 3 receiver going into the season to have a game better than any SEC receiver we've seen since Jalen Hyatt versus Alabama in 2022. Justin Jefferson never had a game like that. Jamar Chase never had a game like that. Amari Cooper never had a game like that. Never. Think about that. Think about that. This was their number 3 guy. 5 touchdowns. 5. And it wasn't just coverage bust. I mean, he was burning your ass. That was a game where, once again, I hammered the under. Hammered. The most listened to betting podcast, their best bet of the week, under Alabama Ole Miss, or Arkansas Ole Miss. Arkansas covers the total on their own. Okay? You should not be done with Taylor Green. All right, I'm just telling you right now. I do not think Taylor Green is going to be Jaden Daniels. I do not think so. I think there are a lot of things Jaden did that are 10 times better than what Taylor Green did. And the biggest is turnover culpability. Jaden is the most turnover adverse quarterback we may ever see in football. I mean, he's that good at not turning the football over. Taylor Green is not that. But I'm telling you right now, with a quarterback as athletic as him, it is in the range of outcomes he becomes ridiculous. Okay? You do not move on from quarterbacks that have experience. You just don't do it. Right? There is really, when you think about it, how many year 5, year 6 quarterbacks have not succeeded with multiple years of starts in the SEC? Like, really think about that. There is one, and it's Peyton Thorne, who is a whole bag of ass. All right? But all the others, if you stick with them, they get better. If you stick with them and you find a decent one with 4 or 5 years of experience, like Taylor Green has, they get better. They almost always get better. Even the ones that we think are ass to begin with. Hell, there was one at Arkansas a few years ago with the same jersey number, not near as athletic, and got 2 times, actually 3 times, actually 10 times the amount of hate. And his name was Brandon Allen. The dude's truck was set on fire. I'm telling you right now, no SEC quarterback has ever taken more hate that turned out to be truly great than Brandon Allen. I will never see it, ever. Okay? Jaden Daniels took a lot of hate from LSU fans. It never reached what happened to Brandon Allen. And the thing that really sucked about it was there's nobody who wanted to win more for a school than Brandon Allen, who went to a school that you could spit on the stadium for where his high school was. Aren't you glad you didn't bail on him? Aren't you glad? So, quarterbacking is hard, especially when you have an offensive line disadvantage. But this idea that you want to throw Taylor Green to the side is lunacy. All right? Do you know, like how many times have you seen Taylor Green this season, while being hurt, put his ass on the line for the team? All right? Now, I'm not as well connected as other reporters in Arkansas like Trey Biddy and all of that, but I'll tell you this from a locker room vantage point, and it pains me to say because I was a big fan of this guy. How many locker room things have you heard with Taylor Green compared to KJ Jefferson? I mean, last year it was every week. KJ Jefferson locker room stories, rumors, and all of it. So you're telling me a quarterback who, I could be wrong on this, once again, I'm not as plugged in as others, doesn't have this ridiculous ego or whatever, is out there playing hurt, putting his ass on the line for the team. You want to move on from that guy? It seems like Taylor Green really wants to make this work, right? So I don't get this idea that you should move on from him. I don't. And you're right. KJ Jefferson, trust me, you won't find a bigger KJ fan than me. I collect his cards. Hell. But, it was every week. All right. I would agree with this. I would. I do think KJ was a better quarterback at Arkansas than Brandon Allen. But the point is you don't move on from quarterbacks that, are experienced, right? Unless things get rancid, like KJ's relationship with Arkansas. Okay. It's just the truth. Now, I do an Arkansas show every Monday at 5 p.m. Central. I don't want this to be too Arkansas heavy. Power Hour SEC is very Arkansas heavy because you guys show me the most love. Now, here's what we're going to do. In the next 5 to 10 minutes, I'm going to answer as many questions as we possibly can. If you're a fan of another team that you might be watching and you want to talk about them, let's do it. Let's go. I thought we were going to talk more Auburn today. Once again, we're live every Saturday morning on Power Hour SEC at 9:30, recapping everything that went down. I want to talk about Mark Stoops a little bit here. I've been very critical of him. None of what's happened this year has really shocked me. All right, none. And, he's in a good spot. He's in a really good spot. They owe him a lot of money. And this is what I always say before you go give a coach an extension. And this is what I would have brought up to Hunter Yurachek with Sam Pittman when they signed him to the extension after the Penn State win. You really have to ask yourself this question. How much better is this coach than a replacement level coach? All right. And when Mark Stoops signed that fat ass extension a few years ago, and the next day he lost to Vanderbilt, that told you everything you needed to know. And this was years ago. All right. I think athletic directors have issues with really trying to figure out who is truly excellent when it comes to being a head coach in the SEC. Now, I say this because I'm about to make a pretty brash statement. But if I were to start a program, let's just say a middle tier program in the SEC, if I was in Arkansas or if I was South Carolina, if you will, or whoever along those natures, all right, if I had to pick one coach to rebuild my program, it's not Kirby Smart. Okay. Kirby Smart is the best coach in the SEC. He just is. Now, has he gotten lucky this year? Yeah. In many ways, he's gotten lucky. But he is the best coach in the SEC. I should not put aside the Natties or anything like that. But the guy that I would start a program with is Josh Heupel. Josh Heupel is the best coach in the SEC. All right. And if I had to, at a middle tier program, pay someone to restart my program, it's Lane Kiffin. All right. He wouldn't be number 2 on my list. In fact, Lane Kiffin was number 2 on my LSU list. But we must celebrate the guy who should have serious love for SEC Coach of the Year. And we talked about him earlier. Clark Lee probably deserves the award. Josh Heupel has a case. But the SEC Coach of the Year is Shane Beamer. Look, I love Donnie. Look at that. Look at Donnie, right on the money. Look at that. What's up, Dante? Good to see you. We got a Malachi Singleton debate. Shane Beamer. All right, what has this guy done this season? Well, let's talk about it. Let's talk about old South Carolina. before we skedaddle here. And once again, if you want your question to be answered, please donate to the cause. I'm an independent guy. I'm very lucky to have a partnership with nooffseason.com, but I'm not with the big On 3 or 247 or anything like that. Okay? Let's take a look at South Carolina. Now, did they start the season off with the stinker versus Old Dominion? Yes. But after that, they have only had one bad game. One. And that was coming off a bye versus Ole Miss. But you tell me how many coaches could have pulled this off this year. Blow out Kentucky at their place. Then outplay LSU, have a few boneheaded penalties, and you choke that game away. Then you have the crappy game versus Ole Miss. You outplay Alabama, lose in a close one. Destroy Oklahoma at their house. Once again, doesn't look that impressive. Bye week. And then you blow the brakes off of Texas A&M. The hottest team in the SEC, arguably. So, yeah, I would agree with Mark. Leave for Coach of the Year. I do think Vanderbilt versus South Carolina very well could be the Coach of the Year battle. All right, whoever wins that game wins Coach of the Year. But holy crap, Shane Beamer's good. All right, and this is why I've been so anti Mark Stoops. Tell me a game where he's competitively played versus an elite team outside of Georgia earlier this season. No, he gets blown out by the elite teams. Shane Beamer versus the three best recruiters on his schedule. Should have been LSU, lost by 3. Very close versus Alabama at their house, lost by 2. And then 24-point victory versus Texas A&M. I mean, what are we doing here? I mean, how freaking good is this guy? And here's what I would have done if I was Auburn. You can go back. Power Hour SEC was around. I said Auburn should drop everything and give Shane Beamer the keys to the program. But I always say this. Tennessee has the best fans in the SEC. I truly do believe it. I truly do believe it. All right. Now, I would biasly say LSU, but I try to be unbiased on here the best I can. Tennessee's got the best fans in the SEC. South Carolina is probably number 2. Their fans are so damn good for a mediocre program. They freaking bring it. And honestly, I'll say this from top down, their marketing is really good. They embraced a risque nickname, the Cox. You know how many jokes can be said about the Cox? Do you know how many higher up, snooty boosters, board of regents would get mad at a nickname like the Cox? I mean, you know, as a former comic, I push back against this notion, but colleges in general are very PC, right? Cox. What does South Carolina do? They embrace it. What else does South Carolina do? Their media has always been top of the line. They also embraced a Finnish EDM song as their battle cry. Now, I'm a DJ, and my favorite type of music to play is EDM. They embraced Sandstorm and made it their own thing. They got the light shows. They probably have the best light show in the SEC. And once again, I've not been there. I'd love to go there. Their fans are so good. They're so damn good. Now let's see here. Let's go to Ozzy. What's up, Ozzy? Hey, okay. I will say this. All right. If this is the same guy I've seen on Twitter, Ozzy, I'm going to be honest. I got a lot of respect for you, man. I do. All right. There's no Arkansas fan that tells it like it is. Now, I've seen your stuff, Ozzy. I'm serious. So, Ozzy, type Y for yes, type in for no. I'll get a lot of hate for this. I'll put you on one of my streams, Ozzy, because you and I have. There's been a lot of bold shit you have said, and I don't like cursing on here, but that's how much you have pushed me, man. I love that. Like, I don't mind people that push the edge. And Ozzy has more enemies in the state of Arkansas than anyone else. Okay. And I appreciate that you value my opinion about this program you care so dearly about. Okay. And you and I would disagree on a lot. But you are entertaining. I really do. And I appreciate you as well, T Money. But Ozzy, I've seen your videos on Twitter. Okay. And I just want to say this. Ozzy, type Y if you're still in this. Okay. I don't think he is. But I strongly, and I really do mean this from the bottom of my heart, and I feel like I, as a non-Arkansas fan, should not have an opinion on this, and only Arkansas fans should be allowed to have an opinion on this. Okay? I strongly disagree with what you have said about Dave Van Horn. Okay? I will say, though, I was thoroughly entertained with what you have said about Dave Van Horn, though. Okay? I will strongly defend Dave Van Horn, even though he might not like me. I asked him a question one time many years ago that he didn't take a liking to, but that's okay. I will respect him. Let's go to Larkin. This actually is one of my best friends, right? And, right on cue here. We'll talk about Curt Cignetti, all right? And if you don't know who that is, you should by now. But we do have a partner now. And even though this isn't Arkansas coverage, we're covering all the SEC. If you are in Northwest Arkansas, shout out, baby, to Sequoia Dental, baby. Let's go. Dental health is wealth, and our friends at Sequoia Dental are looking to help you feel like a more confident person. Dr. William Wilson and his team of experts do everything in their power to make this experience for you not only comfortable, but fun. Yes, take a look at this after and before photo. That guy definitely got himself a date thanks to Sequoia Dental. From teeth whitening to cosmetic surgery to, guess what? Botox. Yes, they do Botox. Call my friend Dr. William Wilson today, or just go book your appointment at sequoiadental.com. Northwest Arkansas, come on. It's Arkansas. Dental health is wealth. Sequoia Dental, sequoiadental.com. Okay? Yeah, so look, I'll be fair. Is this the Rustin rifle in your photo? I love it. Look. Should Arkansas just throw the bag at Curt Cignetti? I want to start by saying this, all right? Every season, there's a team who you just need to bet against the spread every week. And obviously, 2019 LSU was that. But so this year, Indiana is that, right? You just bet them against the number, right? It's kind of like Jaden Daniels overs. If Jaden Daniels is playing, bet the over on the game, it's going to hit. All right. So I guarantee you Curt Cignetti's agent is getting blown up right now. Now, is he older? Yeah, he's older. If you're the head football coach at Indiana, you can just coach football, right? Now, I don't know the ins and outs of Indiana's football program. We do know the most historic thing about their program is two things: Antoine Randall and Lee Corso, right? Other than that, they're really not known for a whole lot more. The brilliance of being a coach there is that you could just be a football coach. You come to Arkansas, you can't just do that. Actually, you go to anywhere in the SEC outside of maybe a few places, you really can't do that, right? It's so much fundraising. There is just a lot that goes into it. But hell yeah, he's going to entertain offers. I could see Florida saying, F it, let's just do it. It's easy to sell Lagway on that. But yeah, he'd be stupid to not entertain it and strike while the iron's hot. But I could also see him being a guy that just sticks it out in Indiana. And, what's going to be difficult is if he wants another job, you get really behind the 8 ball with the college football calendar. And this is why I like Larkin so much. Larkin and I have a lot of deep discussions about sports privately. Like, I really do mean it. He's one of my best friends. I also wanted to do this live stream on Saturday morning to discuss something I'm really passionate about, which is the college football calendar. Okay. I hate the college football calendar. And what I mean by that is I'm a proponent of adding an extra regular season game and getting rid of conference title games. I think that appeases everybody. I'm also a big, big, big proponent of getting rid of the transfer portal in December and getting rid of the early signing period. Now, I understand how the academic calendar works. It doesn't work out well with that. But why in the hell are we worried about academics in a sport that cares very little about it? Okay. It'd be different if Stanford was Alabama, but that's not where we are. Okay. The academic calendar really needs to be put to the wayside for the portal. There needs to be an exemption for football players. And the portal should not start until February or after the national championship game. Because you had situations like Malik Murphy, who was a key member of key backup for Texas's playoff team last year, who had to transfer before the playoff game so he could get his slot at Duke, right? So I bring that up because now with the way coaching cycles work, if you want a job at a big school and there's an opening at a big school, you've got to leave your team, or at least let it be known that you're leaving your team, or else you're going to be behind a full transfer portal class and behind a full recruiting class. So, look, I have also said this. I would seriously consider abolishing spring football. All right. I don't think a whole lot comes from it. I also think if we were to truly look at the teams that succeed or the players that succeed, if they early enroll or not, you wouldn't have much of a difference. I know from watching LSU, most of their elite true freshman players have been later enrollees, guys that came in the fall at all positions, basically. So for high school recruiting, the early enrollee stuff never really made sense to me outside of maybe quarterback, but even then it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And it just sucks. Like, I think spring football is just a total waste of time, right? If it really meant something, why the hell did Ole Miss at spring football, instead of having a spring game, do a dunk contest? Like, really? I mean, just get rid of it. It serves no purpose. It serves no purpose. Okay. The next thing I would do is really, really change things up with how we go about the culture of recruiting. Like, we're so big on getting the signature as soon as we possibly can. And I get it, because recruiting is a 3, 4, 5-year process with every single recruit. But I just hate the early signing period. I think it's so stupid. Like, could you imagine having an NFL draft before the NFL playoff starts? That's essentially what the early signing period is. Like, it's crazy. Imagine any draft happening before anything, right? Like, I remember this a few years ago. Billy Napier made a bowl game, and he had to play Oregon State in a 6-6 bowl game in Dallas when the whole staff was focused on recruiting. And getting a good signing period for the early signing period. They had to play a bowl game the next day versus Oregon State. Got blown out 30-3. Okay? Let's go to Arkansas Festus. Now, with your name, Arkansas Festus, welcome. We actually do, on every Monday at 5 p.m., we do an Arkansas Festival shout out. So we've done Toad Suck Days. So if you're an Arkansas Festival fan, you need to tune in Mondays at 5 p.m. Central. So this is a problem I have with this statement. Coaches don't win or lose games, the players do. And only a couple of players can't win, which is hauling ass after the college free agency killed the game. This is a lot. Punctuation is your friend. We'll go next to the Hog Wild podcast. I'll give you the best candidate out there for Arkansas. Look. I love iced coffee. I really do. Here's my problem with the coaches don't win games. The players do. You are right. You are right. You know, I would say it's probably 70% your athletes, 30% your coaching. Okay. But why do we pay the coaches $7 million a year to begin with? Why? Well, what's the point if that's the case? Are salaries for these coaches just a waste of time? I don't think so. Actually, I could make a case to the contrary, that coaching matters a lot more. Here's a good example of this. All right, perfect example of this. My SEC Player of the Year is Walter Nolan. All right, to me, from start to finish, he has been the most consistent, dominant, best player I've seen in the SEC. Better than Sampson, better than anybody. Okay. I'm a huge Dylan Sampson fan. I'm a sucker for Louisiana players, but it is what it is at this point. Walter Nolan left Texas A&M. All right, their best player left Texas A&M. And their defensive line has still been good. And their roster is still pretty much the same. Okay? Not only did Walter Nolan leave Texas A&M, Evan Stewart left Texas A&M. And they are both projected first-round picks. So not only did they leave, they have left and have had a lot of success. Ole Miss has won a lot of games because of Walter Nolan. Oregon, even though Evan Stewart's names or his stats aren't like ridiculous, he's really freaking good. He got robbed of an amazing catch yesterday versus Michigan. Texas A&M lost both of those guys. 5-star recruits, can't miss players. And they're 7-2. What changed? Someone in the chat tell me, what changed? You know I love you like a brother, man. Actually, you are my brother, basically. Huh? Skunk Bowl for life. What changed? Someone in the chat tell me. What changed? A&M 7-2 this season. Their best player on offense leaves and is really good at Oregon. Best player on defense leaves, goes to Ole Miss. What changed from Texas A&M from last year to this year? Now, Glenn makes a good point. Carter, they still have a loaded roster. You're right. But you still didn't answer the question. What changed? No one's answered the question. What changed from A&M last year to them this year? Now, I pointed out that A&M, on my power rankings, had the third easiest schedule going into the season. That's helped. But since no one wants to answer this, the coach changed. Now, I don't think anyone would have Mike Elko as a top 3 coach in the SEC, or much less a top 5 coach in the SEC. He wouldn't be in my top 5. Coaching matters. Okay. Coaching, culture, all that shit matters. It matters. And look, once again, and let me ask you this. And I will defend this lady because she's gotten victory lapped. And by the way, I have no affiliations to Barstool Sports. None. Okay. I have a friend that works at Barstool, and I texted with them this morning. But and somebody at Barstool gave me my podcasting start in the SEC, but I have no affiliations to Barstool at all. But this week, Casey Smith, female personality for Barstool, she looked bad. She had an opinion. It looked bad. I don't want to get into it. And it's worse if she would have had like some like out there opinion, but she gave an opinion on South Carolina that was just wrong. And it sounded like someone who doesn't actually watch the games. And it's important you actually watch the games, right? I don't watch much of college football outside of SEC. I think it's near impossible to, unless you really are, unless you're like Bud Elliott and all you do is college football. I do a lot of NFL stuff. I have to because I love it. Okay. Also helps that Jaden Daniels is like my favorite like player ever, basically at this point. But I do a lot of stuff on Power Hour NFL, but I don't watch a whole lot of the Big Ten and all that stuff. It's hard to just cover all of it nationally. But that's my goal. I like watching the Big Ten. I think the Big Ten's great. I really do think so. But, it's hard. It's hard to watch all the games. Casey Smith gave an opinion on South Carolina. It didn't come off right. It was bad. She said that the defense wasn't good. South Carolina's got a very good defense. We saw it last night. Okay. And their defense didn't have their best game, but you get the point. I mean, their defense is good. Coaching matters. And the thing that's so important to remember about coaching is oftentimes your first hire is one that you're lucky to not get, right? There's always the Alabama would have hired Rich Rod, and then they went to Nick Saban. Then, of course, there's so many of these. Point being, if coaching didn't matter, explain what would have happened if A&M would have wrongfully hired Mark Stoops instead of Mike Elko. All right. Once again, I'm not the biggest Elko guy, but it made sense. It made a lot of sense. Mark Stoops is not a good coach. Coaching, in many ways, is everything. It's also very lucky, right? Who is the best coach if Sam Pittman will get the boot? Now, I'm going to sleep on this. We do a show every Monday at 5 p.m. that's just Arkansas. All right. Honestly, and this will get me canceled, and that's fine. I think it's a good buy low opportunity on Mike Norvell. I really do think so. Play college football here. He had a rancid transfer portal class. I also think it's coming from me, not anyone else. Okay. I want to throw something your way. And feel free to push back against this. All right. Yeah, Hog, well, I'll check you out and I'll put you on my show. Why not? But here's the thing, and this goes for anyone that's a guest on my show. On Power Hour LSU and Power Hour SEC, I've never had a bad guest. Okay? I've never had a bad guest, ever. I'm still perfect. Okay? I've done media for a long time. I've had plenty of shitty guests. I've had high-profile guests and they were shitty. I've never had a bad guest in Power. You listen to every interview I've done. Every single one of them, the guests were fantastic. Even the players, coaches, whoever. I've never had a bad guest. Same thing on Power Hour SEC. And I know a lot of people in Arkansas media doesn't like this guy, but I know a lot of people in Arkansas media doesn't like me, right? But John Neighbors crushed it on my show this past Monday. And I know you got your ass kicked by Ole Miss this weekend, but a lot of the shit he said then still applies now, all right? But this is what I'll say about Mike Norvell. A job like, let's just say you take over as a head coach at LSU. It is so hard to bottom out the LSU program. It is so unfreaking believably hard. Okay? Now, why is that? Well, Nick Saban got the shit going because Saban figured out, hey, Louisiana has a lot of studs here. Miss Terry convinced him, take the job, and the rest is history. It is so hard for LSU to hit rock bottom. Like, even with Ed Orgeron, the school never, after Orgeron won the Natty, it never rock bottom. Even with Les Miles, never really just rock bottom. They still won 500 when the coaches were terrible. Now, why is that? Well, on those bad, quote-unquote, bad teams, Les Miles still had Leonard Fournette. Ed Orgeron still had Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas Jr., all these guys, right? It's hard to rock bottom at LSU. The hardest state to coach in is Florida. All right? It is the hardest, by far, coach area to win in college football. I have always felt this way. It is harder than Texas, which has a bunch of good schools in it. Texas is a lot easier. California is a lot easier. Of the fertile states where it's very competitive and there's a bunch of Power 5 schools in it, Florida is so hard. And to the people at Florida State that are just hammering Mike Norvell, what they don't realize what they're doing is they're spitting in the face of all these other elite Florida schools that have won natties in the past couple of decades that have also bottomed out. Okay? Florida's bottomed out. Now, they've not had a season as bad as what Florida State is having right now, but they bottomed out. They were irrelevant. Dan Mullen's a really good coach. He bottomed out. Okay? Miami. How long has Miami been terrible? I mean, what are we doing here with Mike Norvell? All right? Florida kids are tough to recruit because guess what? And you can look back for years upon years upon years. Another thing that's kind of difficult about coaching in Florida, and it's not that big of an impact, but it's still something. There's always been another elite coach in the state at one of the smaller schools, right? Like, he's not having a good year now, but Gus Malzahn's done good things at UCF. Lane Kiffin was at FAU for a while. Alex Golsh is really good at USF. There's a lot of good coaches that are recruiting up those Florida 3-stars that are really good players, and they do good things at these schools. It's hard because you're getting hit in so many different directions. It's a very competitive state. A lot of Florida kids have left and gone to the schools in Georgia and the schools in Louisiana. Alabama, Calvin Ridley, hello. It's hard. It is harder to be consistently elite compared to the standards with the oversaturation of schools in that state, right? And this is also very anecdotal. Florida recruits in particular are volatile, right? They're very, very volatile. And I'll leave it at that, okay? It's a tough bunch. It really can be, okay? So Norvell says, look, it's tough for me to recruit in high school. I'm going to portal year in and year out. All right. The problem with portaling year in and year out is you don't really have a whole lot of players that are buying in. Okay. One thing that I think would happen at Arkansas that would not happen at Florida State is, well, you do have to portal a lot. Now that I think about it, because Arkansas just don't produce enough elite guys. But really, at Florida State, it is such a mercenary kind of program where it came out this week that their best receiver last year, Keon Coleman, who's from Louisiana, by the way, was actively recruiting against Florida State after he left. He said, don't go play for Florida State's receiving coach. I'm just saying, one thing that you have always noticed about these Florida schools is culture is really tough to maintain. Okay? But flame me all you want. Flame me all you want. Clip it. SEC guy that does Arkansas content says, pick the coach who has had the worst season out of any coach in college football this season. Buy low, sell high. I'll tell you this. I would take him over Rhett Lashley. I would take him over a lot of guys. All right. Now, why do I have that opinion? Well, I said this before the season began. I said it before the season began. Arkansas should look at Mike Norvell. And him having a bad season is more of a reason to do it. Do you really think if Mike Norvell was like 7-3 right now or whatever the hell, you would have no shot at getting him? And are you really going to throw him out after one bad season? Okay. Florida State is a tough school to coach. The school doesn't have a conference. I mean, come on, what are we doing here? And Arkansas solves a really big problem. A really big problem is Sam Pittman is never the offense, right? The Mike Norvell offense is the offense, right? I would go to him and Alex Atkins, and they can't blank check you. Florida State wants him out. If Hunter Yurchek was on the phone right now, that's what I would say. All right, y'all. That'll do it for me. Don't forget, we have a Tennessee breakdown. If you guys don't mind, all right, I hope you guys enjoyed this. Type Y for yes, type in for no. If you want more Saturday morning breakdowns, we'll go live Saturday at 9:30. Or Sundays at 9:30, excuse me. He actually wanted the jobs a few years ago when he was leaving Memphis. I cannot state this enough. I am not as plugged in as Kirk Herbstreit or Bud Elliott or anyone like that, Josh Pate. But from what I've heard, Florida is hard, right? That is a brutal state to have success, right? So let me know what you guys think. Okay. All right, we'll talk to you soon. It is Power Hour SEC. Boom. And tonight, or this morning, we're doing some scrambled eggs. Let's go. Let's go.